Greetings and welcome to Lez Talk About Books, baby, where we talk with your favorite LGBTQ plus authors. I'm Anita Kelly, and my guest today is Patricia Grayhall. Hi, Patricia.
Hi, Anita.
How are you?
Well, I'm actually doing really well. It's a beautiful day here on Vancouver Island. The sun is shining, the water's sparkling, and I'm talking to you, so all is well.
And I'm jealous, totally. that sounds picturesque. So, So, how have you been since we last spoke? I think that was like just post pandemic. And at
Yes.
wasn't you had a book coming out called Making the Rounds?
It was just before we talked in September of 2022, just before my first book came out, and since then I have I've written 4 books.
What?
Yeah. So I've 2 of them are with the same publisher, She Writes Press, which has moved up in the world to now be distributed by Simon and Schuster, and then one has been self-published, the one I wrote with my partner Linda Ford.
Okay.
And I've just finished a thriller that I'll publish in January.
So. Really? A thriller? That's like new for you, right?
Yeah, totally new. The first book was, of course, a memoir. And it was my first creative writing endeavor. And then the next one was the romance that I wrote with Linda. And then this one is it's a novel, but it's inspired by true events. And then the latest one, which isn't published yet, is a thriller. So I'm genre hopping.
Yeah.
But I learn a lot. I'm continuously taking craft courses and going to conferences and workshops, and so I'm always learning.
Oh, that's fantastic. That really is. I like to see that. I like to see when people like kind of stretch themselves and get outside of their comfort zone and venture out. So
right,
that's wonderful. So let's talk about your new release. It's called A Place for Us, right?
It is.
And when does that come out? And tell us all about it.
So that comes out June 3rd.
Okay.
And I'm going to have my book launch at Third Place Books in Seattle at the Lake Forest Park store.
All right.
And that one is it's a novel inspired by Linda and my struggle to find a country where we could legally live together before marriage equality. It blurs the line between truth and fiction, and the characters are developed to kind of deal with more universal social and political themes.
Okay. So it is a little bit autobiographical?
Well, it's what they now call autofiction.
Okay.
Right. So shall I tell you about the characters?
Absolutely.
Okay. So Jo is an American. She's a driven environmental attorney with career ambitions that sometimes thwart happiness. And Lauren is a spirited British woman who takes risks and seeks adventure. And immigration barriers keep them apart after they first meet in London in 1981. But when they meet again many years later, both women have to confront their existing relationship commitments while also acknowledging their undeniable attraction to each other. So this creates suspense and tension as they navigate trauma recovery, issues of loyalty, honesty, and personal fulfillment, plus painful truths that they've avoided for decades. but then Joe and Lauren face the most daunting challenge of all, which is how can they possibly build a life together when no country will grant them sanctuary as a couple?
Okay. So this takes place prior to 2015, right?
So this takes place the first part one takes place in 1981, and then the second reunion meeting and events take place in 2003 before marriage equality.
Okay. All righty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Life was different then, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. And could be again,
Yeah.
Who knows?
I know. It's scary. I look at all the people who are leaving the U.S. And living elsewhere. So, it's not a bad.
We actually we didn't have a choice actually.
Yeah.
It was Canada was the only country in which we could live together legally as a couple.
Okay. So have you both been in Canada all this time?
Well, we both immigrated to Canada, right?
Like in the early 2000s?
Yeah, in 2000. Well, the process began in 2003. So the story, as I said, it's combines truth and fiction. So some of the scenes will be familiar to our friends who know our meeting and Canadian immigration story. And then other scenes come completely from my imagination. For example, Joe has 3 sessions with a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one obligatory explicit sex scene. There's a big blow up in Yosemite, and there's an oil spill and a harrowing plane ride in the Arctic National Refuge, where Joe makes an about-face career choice. So all of that is made up.
Mm-hmm.
But part one, set in 1981 when we first met, and the barriers then, and then all the trials and setbacks in finding a country to live in that required both characters to immigrate to Canada. That's tracks Linda and my experience very closely.
Wow. So you and Linda actually did meet in 1981?
We did.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And then you both went your separate ways despite your feelings for each other.
Well, because of immigration barriers.
Okay.
And then mainly both of us starting out, in our careers. We were early in our careers, and there was really no way to for either of us to immigrate. And just like Joe, the environmental attorney, I had lots of career ambitions that I didn't want to give up.
Mm-hmm.
So
your second book is called Golden Years and Silver Linings, and
right,
and that's the one you co-wrote with Linda?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
So I'll tell you the story of that because it really has a happy ending both in real life and in the story, of course, because it's a romance. But
love a happy ending.
Yeah. So if you recall, my first book, Making the Rounds, was actually a memoir, and although it read like a novel, but the character in that story, which is so radically different from the person I am now, that it was like writing about someone else. But in that book, she blunders through relationships, and her personal growth lags behind her career success. And my partner, while I was writing that book during the pandemic, was really not happy with me sitting at my computer with my back to her, writing about my old girlfriends, and in some cases actually calling them up to confirm this or that memory.
Oh, yeah, I could understand that.
Right. So in self-defense, I suggested that we write a sweet fictional romance novel together. a novel that has nothing to do with either one of us.
Mm-hmm.
And that resulted in golden years and silver linings. And we self-published that book, which gave me the experience of learning how to self-publish in KDP. And it's been very gratifying. The protagonists are two women in their 60s. They have they originally met in Liverpool, England, but things didn't work out. One went off and got married to a man, and then years later they bump into each other on a golf course in Palm Springs. Anyway, a lot of things unfold that involve families and newfound love in their 60s, and it's just very sweet.
I think I read that. Now that you're talking about it, yeah, I think I read that. I liked it.
And amazingly, a lot of people have read it. And the nice thing about self-publishing under KDP, when I go into the portal and check the reports, I see every day somebody is either buying or reading pages of that book on Kindle Unlimited.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
It's almost 2 years old now.
Wow.
And it's very positively reinforcing.
Yeah, it is. That's great. That's fantastic. Yeah.
So that was fun.
Oh, I'll bet.
So what's even better is that that experience launched Linda on a writing career of her own. Oh. So she's, focused on writing romance, mostly travel romance. And so we have a passion now that we can share.
That's so cool.
Which is fun. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Is she calling her old girlfriends?
No. She actually, she's the the stable rock. She's just had a few. And,
yep.
Unlike me, I had too many in my 20s.
So were you like a party girl in your 20s?
No, hardly. I mean, I was in pre-med, and then I was in medical school and going through rigorous medical training, so there was no time to party.
I guess not.
But I did manage to have a number of relationships, really while trying to figure out what I really wanted. And it was a tumultuous time too. It was the 70s. It was during the sexual revolution and second wave feminism. And there weren't very many role models for couples, long-term lesbian couples that were out.
Yeah.
That I knew, unlike now where, there's lots of wonderful role models of long-term relationships and of same-sex couples. So, but it was hard, it was really hard to find a stable relationship during that time.
Yeah, I really, let's see. I'm thinking Lily Tomlin and what's her wife's name? Jane.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I think they were about the only lesbian couple I think that I was aware of back then.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, my role model was Patience and Sarah.
Ah.
I didn't know any real live long-term, lesbian couples back then. It was really in the scene, where you met people was you went to the bar.
Yeah.
And that was not the healthiest environment. Yeah. Although, I have fond memories of my flannel shirts and fry boots. And
yeah. I still have fry boots. And I remember after you come home from the bar, I would anyway, take my clothes off in the garage and let them air out because they just smelled so bad of smoke.
I know smoking was allowed back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Very different. That's wild to think about those things.
indeed.
So is Linda British?
Yeah, Linda's British.
Okay.
She grew up in London,
Okay.
and lived for many years in France.
Ah.
So my current book, A Place for Us,
Mm-hmm.
it does, the places are a little bit different in that Joe lives in San Francisco in the second part two, and Lauren is living in Paris,
Okay.
and each of them are already in relationships when they meet again,
Mm.
not good relationships. So I explore some issues that are in the book that are kind of difficult, I think, for same-sex couples to deal with. There's some history of emotional abuse, and just how one deals with uh, ambivalent feelings in a relationship that's not that healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the good news is they shed those relationships, and their relationship is much healthier.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So it does have a happy ending.
It does indeed have a happy ending. It is a romance.
Yep.
I think one of the things, I should read you the. Let's see if I can minimize this. I don't know if I can. Doesn't look like I can. Oh well. One of the Seattle book reviews did a wonderful review that I really liked.
Oh,
I'm not sure I can pull it up now for some reason.
nice. And was that and that was on A Place for Us?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. And is that on your website?
It's actually on, yeah, it's on so the book is available everywhere. It's on Amazon, but it's also available in bookshop.org, and it will be available in libraries and stuff. And
Great.
then when you go and click on the book, then there's all the critical reviews.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have the one here from the Seattle Book Review. I'll
Yeah,
just read it
yeah,
here.
you
Yeah.
could read it. I like that one. That's my favorite.
It says, while A Place for Us is a romance at its core, it is also a meditation on self acceptance and the search for a home, not just in a physical sense, but in the arms of someone who truly understands and cherishes you. This heartfelt novel will resonate with anyone who has ever longed for a place where they truly belong. Ah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I like that one. And Greta Kammermeyer also did a review, which was very kind of her. And
Mm.
she she's read she read Making the Rounds, and actually she said, "All right, so so are you going to write a sequel to Making the Rounds?" And I thought, I don't think I have another memoir in me. So,
What was harder to write, the fiction or the memoir?
oh, for sure, the memoir. I mean, it was quite a wrenching experience because I had to go back, and I, what precipitated it in the first place was I had never written anything creative. Creative writing
Mm-hmm.
was not something I ever did.
You did a lot of technical writing,
Yeah,
research.
scientific,
Yeah.
medical, and so during the pandemic, I was downsizing, came across all these journals, and I was about to throw them in the burn barrel, and I started just flipping through, and I thought, wow, this is pretty juicy and historical. So I took it on as a pandemic project,
Mm-hmm.
to do that.
Yeah.
And but going back through that, I took a 6-month writing course with Brooke Warner, who actually ended up my publisher, and she advised me that when I write it, I should stay in character. I shouldn't be the person I am now. I have all this wise commentary from 50 years later, but I should stay in character. Well, staying in character in the muddle, the muddle that I went through in this coming of age memoir was difficult.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
I don't think I would want to do that. I wouldn't want to relive some aspects of my life,
Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine that would be really, really difficult.
But as with most honest memoirs, which I tried to be very, very honest, and it's not, I don't really portray myself in the best light sometimes.
Well,
and
we're only human, right?
Right. But, it's interesting because it is an honest memoir, and the feedback that I got was from people was, they'd write to me with things like, thank you so much for writing this. I couldn't put it down. I could totally relate. It changed my life. I feel less alone. Mm-hmm. and then I also got, a few reviews from people who were disappointed. And sometimes I just heard nothing at all from my friends who read it. I don't know what that meant.
Yeah.
But, it's kind of, I think it's always risky and a bit of a mixed bag. People bring their own biases and reactions to things, to your story.
Heck yeah.
From their own experience and their own triggers,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think that makes it a little more fraught. And I found writing fiction to be a lot of fun. I know when I wrote A Place for Us, which it does have a happy ending because happily, it's inspired by my experience with my wife, and we've been together for 22 years. And so, that was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Going back and I did make stuff up for dramatic purposes as I was taking courses about how to write novels.
Mm-hmm.
And it made the book, I think, compelling as a novel. And then my latest book, which is a thriller, is actually I just finished writing the description of it. Do you want me to? I can read that to you because I just finished it, and I think it pretty well sums it up better than me blathering on. So, okay. So it involves environmental attorney Joe again.
Okay.
So when environmental attorney Joe sets out to build a groundbreaking case against World Petrol, one of the nation's largest refineries, she's armed with the voices of Houston Ship Channel residents who believe toxic emissions from nearby petrochemical plants are fueling a surge in cancer. Bolstering their fears is a pivotal study by Dr. Tori Nelson, a respected Houston physician and Joe's close friend, whose research is the first to reveal alarming cancer rates in neighborhoods surrounding the refinery. But just as Joe's loss gains momentum, her case is thrown into chaos when Tori is shockingly arrested for bank robbery. So Joe is certain her friend has been framed in a sinister effort to bury the damning research. Determined to clear Tori's name, Joe plunges into a high-stakes investigation that threatens her case and forces Tori to confront buried emotions and unresolved regrets from their shared past. As Joe unravels the events behind Tori's arrest, she uncovers a tangled web of deception involving Tori's estranged husband, a mysterious woman, and shadowy figures complicit in environmental crimes. With everything on the line, Joe's case, justice for the residents, Tori's freedom and career, and their friendship, the two women fight for truth and justice in a battle with big oil that leads to an explosive and unexpected conclusion.
Wow. That's all I can say. That sounds great. Now, did you have to do like a lot of research for that, or were you like pretty well versed in the oil industry?
Well, my specialty was occupational environmental medicine. So, in fact, I did these kinds of studies. Also, I had, so, as writers, we always we usually draw on stuff from our own life.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was early in my career, I worked with this brilliant physician who we were all working together in Washington, D.C., and did a brief stint with the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Anyway, when Reagan was elected, his goal was to decimate OSHA, which he started to do, and we all left, much like today, actually.
Yeah.
And my colleague went to New Orleans, and he was, in fact, arrested for bank robbery. And he was also doing some studies involving the petrochemical industry and along that, what's now known as Cancer Alley, showing excess cancers. And the question was, and I don't know the answer to this actually in real life, was he, because he was convicted on the basis solely of eyewitness testimony. There was no physical evidence and no apparent motive. It just eyewitness of bank tellers. Wow. So that was the basis of the conviction, and he was sent to federal prison. Well, I don't know, if there was a lot of upheaval in his personal life with a divorce and stuff. I just don't know whether he did it or not.
Yeah.
But so when I wrote this novel, as you go along through the novel, you actually don't know whether this, Tori Nelson robbed the bank or not.
Okay, so it's left
but
up
I
to
raised
the
all
reader?
these. Huh?
So it's left up to the reader to decide?
No, it has a conclusion.
Oh, okay. But as you're going along, you don't know.
But as we're going along, I'm sort of, I have lots of possibilities going on.
Okay,
anyway,
wow.
It was great fun to write, and it drew upon my, my long career as a doctor.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I that sounds like it's like a bestseller.
Well, I'm actually going to self-publish that one because I think it's really good, and I think it's going to take off. And I like looking at my pages read on KDP. So
that's so cool. So how does it feel to have right now 3 almost published novels under your belt?
Well, remember the first one was a memoir, even though it read like a novel. So I have 3, and it's kind of surprising. I think that I now have a new career as a writer after my retirement as a doctor.
Yeah, I would say that. Yes.
And it's not so far-fetched because when training to become a doctor requires a lot of discipline and hard work and study, right? And so I'm actually applying those same traits to the craft of writing, learning about publishing and editing and marketing.
Yeah.
And the other thing that is true is that in seeing patients, because I was in a specialty where I spent a lot of time with patients, and every patient has a story. And my job was to listen to what they're saying and what they're not saying. So it pretty much taught me to be a good observer and to notice small things like gestures and subtle shifts in facial expression. And I think that helps me create more nuanced characters and scenes. And then
you have the makings of a good therapist.
Yeah. Actually, yeah.
Yeah.
And then my other specialty is internal medicine. So that involves a lot of diagnosis and gathering facts, forming hypotheses, and drawing conclusions. And this analytical process helped me structure the complex plot of my latest book and weave together multiple storylines in this medical environmental thriller. So, again, I think that the two careers mesh together fairly well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. Like people think of writing, creative writing as like an art, but there's also a science to it. I believe like you have to have almost like your own formula for sitting down and working through plots and characters, and everyone does it differently. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think when all that comes together, it helps with the actual art of writing, like I guess the imagination and the idea aspect of it. Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
so
Yeah, and it does. It does. It. Yeah. It is a craft that can be
hmm
learned.
hmm
It's not like you just like born with the artistic talent to write. You
hmm
really have to work at it.
was it like difficult for you to make that switch from technical writing and writing about your research and um like the switch to creative writing?
Well, the most difficult part, I think, is portraying emotion. I mean,
Mm,
people read uh, creative writing works to feel, right? They want to feel something. And
yes.
so
Yeah.
um, certainly people didn't read my uh, medical journal papers to feel anything. Well, they did feel because, actually some of them dealt with controversial environmental occupational medicine subjects, but it's totally different to write in a way that you make the reader, you know, become part of the story, and to feel
Mhm.
feel emotions along with the characters. I
Yeah.
think that was my biggest struggle. I think I partially pulled it off in making the rounds. I think I just have gotten better and better at it with each book.
Yeah. Yeah. You must.
Yeah.
Um, if your uh, instructor took you on as a client, uh, you know, I mean, I think that says a
Yeah, my
lot. Your
publisher.
publisher, yeah, that says a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you're
And
go ahead.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was just saying, and I'm still with She Writes Press, and they've gone through a lot. It's really evolved, and it's distribution is quite important. Getting into bookstores and libraries and stuff like that, and being distributed by Simon and Schuster is really a plus, I think.
Yeah.
Um, and they've also become part of a larger cooperative of imprints, which it's just an ever evolving publishing landscape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I imagine just like anything else, it's always changing. Um,
Right.
so you have won, and your books have won like several awards over the past few years. Um, and I was reading like I think it was the um, Golden Crown. Were you up for an award there?
Yeah,
And
I did. I was a finalist for the nonfiction, but I think the most for me the most significant thing that happened early on was getting a starred Kirkus review, which is pretty unusual for a debut author, and and then getting in their list of best 100 indie books of 2022.
yeah,
That's all books, not just LGBTQ themed books.
Yeah, that's
And
fantastic.
I was pretty shocked, actually. I was like, what? Um, and and then She Writes Press encourages us to, apply for other awards, and I got a bunch of others, best book awards and best book in the category of LGBTQ memoir, best memoir in general.
Mm-hmm.
I got probably 10 or 12 awards. And
Was that just for your first book?
that was for the first book.
Wow.
And what it did actually is I am, of an age where accumulating awards and accolades doesn't mean that much to me.
Mm.
But uh, what it did do is it just affirmed that, I seem to be able to write stories that are compelling.
Yep.
And and that was, that encouraged me to continue on. But what encourages me the most and what means the most to me is actually the readers who either talk to me in person when I do book clubs, or write to me, even, message me on Facebook or Instagram, or send me emails through my website, who say things like how much my book meant to them. It's usually making the rounds, how much it meant to them, and how it gave them courage and made them feel less alone. And the other thing that I really like is that Making the Rounds, which has, a few rather explicit sex scenes in it, mm-hmm. is in 120 libraries, and many of those are in red states. I mean, it's in, Oklahoma, Kansas, Virginia, it's just places you wouldn't imagine.
Yeah.
Indiana, very red states.
Yeah.
And I just think there's going to be somebody, well, there was actually in Missouri, this one woman wrote to me on my website and said, told me that the book really meant a lot to her, and would I consider talking to, it was short notice, would I consider talking to her book group that the bookstore was having a group read that book, and would I get on Zoom and talk to them, and I just was so pleased with that. I mean, these people kind of need our literature, to feel validated and affirmed, and that they're not alone, especially now.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. It's I always think of like younger people who need it, but there are a lot of adults who are kind of isolated and not living an authentic life, and this is something that really can be so impactful. So it's great. It's really
absolutely. Yeah. And I did have one woman who lives in a small town in Colorado. She wrote to me on my websites, and she said she was married, that she grew up in a very religious family, that she's still very involved in her church, but she's always loved women, and she's on the verge of making major changes at age 42, and it just, and she read my book and it gave her courage, and these things mean more to me than the awards.
Yeah.
And in fact, I probably, golden years, I didn't apply for anything, and I'm ambivalent about whether I'm going to apply for any awards for A Place for Us. I think the publisher wants me to, mm-hmm. And I may do a few mm-hmm. to appease the publisher, but I think that I hope that maybe I'll give some people courage to immigrate to Canada.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. I definitely think that that is a huge possibility. There are a lot of people who I think are, planning uh, exits. Um,
Uh-huh.
so that could just be the something that really gives them that courage to just do it, to make the move.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy
No,
as,
no.
it's it's easier when if you're younger.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And in my
Everything is.
everything is, yeah, everything is. But our experience, and I actually make the ages of the protagonists in A Place for Us the same as Linda's and I were. So we were in our early 50s,
Mm-hmm.
and Linda 51 and I was 53. And in Canada, they take it's a point system, and they take points off for every year over 50.
Oh wow.
So, and you get points for speaking French, and of course Linda speaks French fluently, so that helped.
Nice.
But uh, the it's a very rational point system where they want skilled workers, but
Mm-hmm.
they also want artists and farmers. So
Well,
there's
nice.
that
Yeah.
separate channel, and I think the whole process has become more expedited, and um, so I think it's easier than it was in 2003, but
Yeah.
it's still quite a process.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe that.
Yeah.
So, well, Patricia, where can our listeners get a copy of Making the Rounds?
Well, both Making the Rounds and A Place for Us are available everywhere.
Okay.
So you can get it through your bookstore. They're also both going to have, they both have um, print, ebook, and audiobook.
Okay.
And the the voice actor who does the audiobook for A Place for Us is Abby Craden, which is well known. I think she's well known to many um, Sapphic readers because she is wonderful.
Wow.
She does, and the reader Alex, um, blanking on her last name, but anyway, she was a voice actor for Making the Rounds. She was very good too.
Oh.
So there's always the audiobook option, and and the audiobook, for some reason, despite my best efforts, I can't figure out how to put it up for pre-order. But A Place for Us is already up on the Simon and Schuster website for pre-order. It's up on Amazon. It's up on bookshop.org. It's up on Google. It's up on Apple Books. It's all over the place. So
Great. Great. And that actually comes out on June 3rd.
June 3rd.
Okay.
But, it's up for pre-order now.
Yeah. Awesome. That is wonderful.
Yeah.
I can't wait to read it. A Place for Us. And that is Patricia Grayhall's upcoming, soon to be released novel. So you will not want to miss it, listeners. And Patricia, where you're on Instagram and
I'm on Instagram and Facebook. I
okay.
deleted my Twitter account.
Okay, as did I.
Yeah, and I've never been into TikTok, but so that's, and of course my website, www.patriciagrayhall.com.
Okay, all right.
That has the most information. It also has all the places to click on for audiobook and print book and ebook.
Yeah, that's a pretty inclusive. Like I was really impressed with your website. It's really inclusive of everything. It's great.
Right.
So, well, Patricia, do you have any parting words for our listeners today?
I do have parting words.
All right.
So, I would urge your listeners to please support your local independent bookstores and libraries. So in the coming years, I think they are going to be one of the few bastions of truth and freedom of expression in the U.S. And they also are a hub of community gatherings and book discussions. And you just don't get that experience online. So both Making the Rounds and my new book, A Place for Us, are available through independent bookstores. And I just would urge readers to shop there. And support the local bookstore, by going to events and going to discussions.
Yeah.
So
yeah, those are great words of wisdom, because I think you're probably telling the future here about bookstores and libraries being, the place where you can really find the truth of our history, and of it's things are changing rapidly. So really great words. Support your independent bookstores and libraries. So thank you, Patricia Grayhall, for being with us today. That is all the time we have. I'm Anita Kelly, and thanks for joining Lez Talk About Books, baby. So until next time, may your journey be lighthearted, peace be plenty, and be safe, folks.